Welcome, dear listeners, to a new edition of Entre Cómics. Today we have a special guest, the writer John McLean-Foreman. John has recently published his last work, The Machines, in collaboration with artist Eric Nguyen. We talk about the first issue in our show. We were a little harsh with it, truth be told, and unexpectedly that podcast reached out to him. He has been kind enough to grant us an interview to better know his series and his work as a writer. And now we are ready to greet him. Good morning, John.
Hi, good morning, guys.
Okay, first of all, thank you for your time. And could you please introduce yourself to our listeners and tell us about your writing background a little bit?
Sure. Well, let's see. Well, we'll do it super quickly because it's a long story. But basically, let's see. How can I say it quickly? Basically, I taught myself to write back in the early 2000s. I had sort of dabbled in journalism by accident. A friend of mine gave me an opportunity and to actually do something similar-ish to what you guys do. And I sort of specialized in doing interviews, and it was a lot of fun. But I always found that I was sort of talking to people who were doing stuff and not doing anything myself. And so I left that, and I got this book called Story by Robert McKee. And so I read that, and I practiced writing every day, and it took me about a couple of years. And I foolishly thought that getting into the game industry would be the easy way to go. But when I was trying to get in, I had to not only say, hey, you should hire me as a writer, but I had to say, you should have a writer. And that was just not standard in the industry at the time. And so after about 2 years of getting rejections and practicing and doing a very difficult day job, I did data entry, which is incredibly boring. So I leaned back into journalism briefly. I did an interview with John T. Barnes, who was the head of Black and White Studios at Lionhead. And so he hired me on as a writer, and by coincidence, at the same time, I had my first comic book accepted by Image Comics. And once in working at Lionhead, once you've had your first job as a lead writer in a AAA studio, then sort of the door is all open for you. And at the time, there was very few of us who were doing that officially, and because I was also willing to sort of travel around the world, I would go wherever the jobs were. It was not overly difficult to sort of rise in the industry.
Mm-hmm. So if we have understood
Sure.
right, your first instinct was to enter the video game industry.
Yeah.
As a writer.
Yeah.
Not the comic book one.
No, because, so to cut back a little earlier, as I wanted to go to art school when I was younger. My father explained to me that there was no money in art, and so he said you should go into business. And so I did that briefly. I was like, this sucks. And so I came back to I sort of wandered around for like 10 years doing nothing, and I came back into writing. Sorry, I totally lost my train of thought there. Can you ask me your question?
Nothing happens. Okay.
Ask me the question again. I'm sorry.
Yes. Anyway, we had, digging a little bit, we found prior to The Machines that you are credited as a writer in Patient Zero in 2004.
Right.
Can you tell us anything about this work?
Yes. Yeah. So sorry, just to finish your previous question, is why did I choose games first? Because I wanted to I would have tried anything. I would have done films, I would have done comics, I would have done anything. So I was trying sort of them all at the same time. Now, Patient Zero was because nobody was hiring me in the game industry. I decided, I was just going to do it myself. And so I found this amazing artist, and I was writing my story. And we sent it through to Image, and Image decided they liked it, and they picked it up. And it was. You want to know about the story itself, or what the process was of getting into Image?
Oh, okay, that would be very interesting, yes, because nowadays we have this idea of image probably totally different from what it was then.
Well, at the time, let me see if I can remember. Is basically what you had to do is you had to draw for them the first 5 pages absolutely complete. So you had to have the colors, the art, the story. You had to send them what the script was, but you had to give them a log line, like the 25-word description that really sold them. And if they liked it, then they said, okay, come on board. And I wanted it to be a 6-issue story arc. And I'd sort of set the whole story up to be 100 comics long. And they said, okay, well, we're going to give you 4 issues. And I was like, oh shit, how do I tell this story in 4 issues? So sort of rewrote it, reworked it. And when it came out, it was not very good, shall we say, and it didn't do super well. I think we sold about 4,000 issues worldwide. But no, working with Image was actually an amazing experience, because all you had to do at the time was, as a creator, you get to own everything. Image doesn't own anything. They just they take at the time they took a basic fee per month, and then they just recouped what their costs were for the printing, and that was it. And they did all the sort of the publishing and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Anyway, I don't think that anyone are very good at doing their first job in anything. Mm. So the same impressions and experiences here with another things entirely, but well, the first times are always very difficult. Anyway, and returning to the machines, that
sure.
It's the reason of this interview, or at least the idea we had. What can you tell us about a video game with the same name, The Machines? Is it in development? We have read on the internet something about it.
Sure. Basically, a friend of mine, a bunch of AAA designers, they decided to get together and build their own game, and so it's using the Unreal 4 engine on mobile phones, right? So it's similar to Boom Beach, Clash of Clans.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
So it's that kind of game, and but it's sort of set in the sort of a post-apocalyptic world. It's going to have ultimately sort of a more of a complex story, and there's a bit more strategy involved than normal as well. It's not just you can direct your robots more, and the bases are a little more complex. And again, of course, because we're going to have more story involved, it's actually quite a lot of fun.
Are you? I don't know. Writing also for the game, the video game.
Yep. The how it happened was I was working for a big game company. I was bored, and my friend, he said he had this game, and I said, oh, okay. So I sort of designed. I designed him a narrative devices document. So basically, a narrative devices document, what you do is it's not just what the story is, what the world is, what the characters are. It's how is the story conveyed in the game? How do you get it across through the gameplay? Because most games, what they do is they separate. They have they show a cutscene and they play the game, right? And it's only when you sort of marry the two that it's something that works beautifully together. So I designed this thing for him, and then he said, come work for me. I was like, yeah, I would love to. And so what we did was my initial design was of the narrative aspect of it was very ambitious. And then we said, okay, so within our budget, within our timeline. So it's sort of being pared down. And so right now it's we have some the context and who's fighting who and all that sort of aspects that are part of the game. And then as the game does well, then we're going to start rolling out more stories, more character development, more gameplay that specifically brings out emotions and so forth. So one of the things that's very important in a game, if to connect the story, is you have to know why you're doing something,
And whose idea was to translate that to a comic book form? And why? Why did you think that it would be interesting?
Um, well, I think it was interesting because basically, what the reason why he and I had started talking about it in the first place was I had said one of the things that I would like to do is I like creating worlds. I like creating intellectual properties. I like creating entirely new universes and so forth. And so, ultimately, if I create all these things in the long run, I want to own them, right? It's like to imagine being the guy who creates a Spider-Man or a Star Wars and so forth. But if I just write a film, then I don't own any of it. So I thought, if I write a comic book, then and publish it and find, because I mean, to make a comic book, it's going to cost you $60,000, $80,000, depending. And so you publish that, and if it does well, it might pay for itself. If it doesn't, you still own the intellectual property. And I said, this was my idea to ultimately do that and put out, a couple of these a year. And his idea, because he's sort of very forward thinking, is to create games and films and TV and different platforms and the whole thing, right? He even his operating system is not just the Unreal 4 sort of as a base, but they have sort of an operating system behind it, which will feed other game platforms, and so people will be able to use their system as a development. So it's sort of spreading out. His idea is to be able to build many different things at the same time.
Okay, back to the comic. There is
Right.
a fantastical or superhuman element going on, or so it seems reading the first issue, at least. What do you think it makes an interesting mix to mix, I don't know, science fiction with fantasy? Why that mix?
Well, can I ask you guys a question first?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so I had to have a friend of mine translate what you guys said.
Okay, it wasn't nice, was
No,
it?
I heard that. I heard that the only thing that you guys liked, I think you liked the robot and the colors, and that was it.
Yes, well, as a matter of fact, I was a little bit more okay with the comic. I thought that maybe it was lacking some development of characters.
Mhm.
We have seen very little about them. But, well, I thought there is an idea here. I can see that there is an idea. But I don't really know where is going this idea and why do we need to care about these characters, because we haven't seen them doing much.
Exactly. Yeah.
That was our main criticism, I think.
And I think that was actually an excellent criticism, because it's like a friend of mine read it afterwards, and not your piece. He read the comic just like a few days before you guys reviewed it, and so he got to the end. He goes, "Yeah, you know what? I'm kind of left with the feeling of so what." And
Yeah.
I thought about it. I was like, "Oh, God damn it! Okay." So like I realized what I had done is because we had such limited space, and so I'm sort of used to writing with more room. So I can, if something needs more setup, I can add more scenes and so forth. And in my trying to pare everything down into just 16 pages, I realized what I had left out was the main character. She doesn't make actually any choices. She's just reactive, right? And so we don't, as you say, you don't get any character development. So you don't know why she's doing what she's doing. You don't know what emotional struggle she's having. It's a very So the first issue, it comes across as sort of, I think, quite one-dimensional.
Anyway, we must admit that we had a hard time wrapping our heads around the comic's time frame also, because
Sure.
it starts with 1 week ago flashback,
Yep.
then it says
Yep.
2 days earlier,
Yeah.
Okay, and
Yeah.
later it states today, only to go back to a week ago.
Yeah.
And why that back and forth?
I think the back and forth was because again it was a matter of trying to sort of save space because in again sort of creating the comic, it's like, oh crap, it's like, how do we take, because the story in the game is quite large. There's different robot factions and stuff like that, so we had to drop that out. So the idea in the world is humanity has been more or less wiped out. There was a certain robots that joined the humans to try and fight with them and save them, but they were eventually overwhelmed, and humanity's been enslaved. It's only in the past few years that humans have started to evolve into something else. And everybody's terrified of these humans. Like the robots are terrified of them because every one of these humans can actually do damage to a robot, and the humans are terrified of them because of what the robots will do to anybody who protects one of these humans. Sorry, dude, I'm a little nervous, so I keep forgetting what your questions are.
No, there is no problem at all. We are
why
delighted to hear a creator talking about anything he wants. There is no problem with that.
So why the jumping around? That was the question. Right.
After reading the first issue, we were talking about also that we knew very little about the protagonist, and you have explained that, and the world that she lives in, and we had this doubt that will the past of the protagonist be an important part of the story? I mean, will we get to know also what happened with the machines, or it's the story just of the protagonist, and we are going to have the general idea of what happened with the machines and not the concretions? Or
yeah, it's we're gonna have to sort of stick with what's happening right now. It's no, sorry, I'm remembering what your question was before. It was like, why did I jump around? Is to sort of get all that complexity out into this, sort of piece it together. Because if I had done it chronologically, it wouldn't have fit together quite as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's like, okay, so I have to make a hint at the metahumans are scary, and I have to make a hint that, the robots are totally in control and it's the end of the world and blah, blah, blah. So what we will see is we won't get into one of the things I did want to explore is, touch on how the world got to this stage. Mm-hmm. But there's really no room. So it's just what we're looking at is just Reich's arc as she's sort of dealing with what's happening to her.
We haven't really talked with so many creators, but we have listened many interviews, and listening to you also, we have this impression that writing a comic book, it's more about deciding what you want in and what you must left out than, there is a process right there, but maybe the most important thing is to know exactly what you want in the comic and what it can wait for a second issue or not get into the issue at all.
Yeah, well, exactly. So what I think it comes down to as well, it's like, if you had a 32-page comic, then you have more room to sort of fill things in, and you have the choice of, because I don't know if you noticed, but there's a lot of sort of 6-panel comic pages, right? So the more you have to compress a page, sometimes the tighter the story gets, and the more you have to explain through dialogue as opposed to physical motion.
Mm-hmm. Right? Anyway, you as a writer, do you like more those stories that have something unsaid and for the reader to have his opinion about what's going on, or do you prefer being very thoroughly explaining everything in your story?
No, it's like I want people to understand. You want people to understand instinctively, but having I would like it so that you guys understand why somebody's making a choice and why the world is the way it is, and so forth. And I think in this issue, obviously, I missed a couple of the pieces. Like, I mean, even at the end, when Bravo Zulu sort of comes back to his own consciousness, and he's looking at right underneath him, and he says, like, what are you? We never really have space in the comic to explain how different these metahumans are. Sorry, dude, I'm sort of wandering all over the place. I'm I'm not really answering any of your questions.
Okay, it's okay, John. Really, it's really okay. We are learning
Okay.
many things about the story and about the comic. We did want to ask you also about your don't know, partner, Eric Nguyen.
Sure.
What can you tell us about him a little bit, and how did you know him and start working with him?
Well, I mean, it was one of the things that's very strange in the comic industry, and I don't know if it's just because we are the people who own the property, right? So we're the sort of the bosses. We don't actually deal with any of the art team directly. So what happens is I write and I send it to Dark Horse, and then Eric does layouts, and then I give feedback through Dark Horse, and then he does the first draft, and then I do whatever final tweaks. I make notes on whatever final tweaks need to happen. But I've never actually talked to him.
Oh, that's a little strange, no?
Weird, right?
I mean, in those times of when we are talking about the comic being a collaborative industry, and that you have a writer and an artist, that you have to work together and all these things, and you are talking about no, I write my script, I deliver it, and then it came some pages and I send them again. It's weird, yes. I don't know if that's the way always in Dark Horse, or it's something maybe more common than we think in the industry.
The impression I get is it's excuse me. The impression I get is it is common. Most of the people who work in comics like to do their own thing. They've chosen this industry because they can be at home and so forth. And I think some people do collaborate. Like the guys who did Lock and Key. They were obviously, I'm sure they were back and forthing a lot in their work. And I think it makes a huge difference because then it really is a collaboration. Because when in the game industry, there is no I do my bit, then you do your bit. It's like there's constant I do my bit, and then you comment on my bit, and you add to my bit, and I comment on your bit, and we feed each other, right? And it's like the idea is, I would like to. My preference to work on a comic would be to brainstorm with the artist and say, what do you think of this? Because he will have ideas and stuff that'll go, oh, that's brilliant, and just some sketch or drawing he's done will lead to this whole new idea. And as it is, it's this sort of segmented thing. It's weird.
But in this case, with a video game as a base for the comic, did you send some material or references to Eric?
Yeah. So we have a concept artist who works for us, and so he did all the design, and the the designs are done as well in such a way that you can see the profile of the machines from like 1 centimeter high, kind of thing. So they were designed specifically so that they could be recognizable even when very small.
Okay. You have talked about, and we are talking the whole interview about your video game background.
Sure.
And not only background, but it's your actual job. Also,
Sure.
In your experience, what are the similarities and differences between comic writing and video game writing? It's a broad question, but
No, I think it's very different. It's very, very different. The medium is, because comic books are sort of like half. Comic books are half book and half film kind of thing. So it's got the visual quality, but you sort of have to go into the heads of the characters sometimes and sort of explain things because the drawings don't always get things across. In game writing, it really depends on which company you're with. Every company does it differently. I think the ones that do it best are the ones that have they make the story sort of the main pillar of the game, right? You get things like Naughty Dog, The Last of Us. It's obvious that story was important to these guys, or the guys who Telltale Games, who did The Walking Dead. Like, story is like at the very height of their importance, or even Grand Theft Auto. In these types of games, what you're doing is you're creating context through gameplay. You don't just have a cutscene and so forth. You take an action. You're in a place for a certain reason and so forth. And so there's all real storytelling in games is when you don't notice the storytelling is happening. You understand why you're doing things and you care about why you're doing things. Now in comic books, there's none of that. It's more, as I say, it's sort of like half novel, half film. And as the writer of a comic book, I don't know if you've read actual treatments. What the writer has to do is they're sort of like half director, half storyteller. So like you have to plan out what all the shots are. You say, okay, so here's the scene, and in this panel it needs to be a close up because we got to get the emotion across. And this one, okay, it's got to be a full body shot because it's going to be action, and you got to see what's going on. Oh my God, we don't have enough space on the page. Okay, so so it's you have to understand sort of camera angles and all that kind of stuff. It's very, very different. They're both very rewarding in very different ways.
Mm-hmm. And how do you usually start your writing process? Do you define first the plot or the characters or maybe the setting?
It totally depends. What I'll do. It also depends if I'm the one who's coming up with it exclusively on my own, or if somebody has an idea already, and then I add to it. If it's for myself, what I'll do is I like to get a pen and paper, and I'll just sort of randomly write terrible ideas down, and I'll just as this idea. If I could create anything, any story, what would I want it to be? And I let my mind flow, and then I'll come back to it the following day, and generally those terrible ideas will spark into something better.
Mm-hmm. Back to the machines.
Sure.
How many issues will there be?
There will be 4.
4 issues, okay. And what can we expect specifically from the second issue? Something that you can know, if you know also when will it be available? What can we expect from it?
Well, I think you're going to get more. It's not going to be available for a while because to answer that question first, what we're doing is we're using the comic now as sort of a reward and a thank you for our game testers. So we're going to have we've got about 3,000 testers and so forth, and so they're going to get first dibs at the comic book. So they're going to have like a specific code that they can access it, and then once that's been there for a while, then it's going to be released to the public. In terms of what we can expect in story wise. I think you guys will like it a little better because it does get into more choices. It does start to explain the world. I tried to rather than going, this is what the world is, blah 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 blah. In the first issue, what I tried to do is sort of explain it through actions, and so in this issue we get to see who the bad guy is and who get to know more about the good guys and what they want and why they want it. Actually, and I want to thank you guys because it was because of my friend and you guys going, yeah, so what? I was like, you know what? I have to explain a little better what she's thinking. So I've dropped into, I added a bit more internal dialogue.
I don't think that anyone has thank you, or thank us earlier for giving, yes, quite rough review, but well,
that's okay.
thank you. Anyway, a couple of things, and we are finishing.
Sure.
Okay, let me get my notes.
Sure.
Um, eh, from what you have told us, I get that you are maybe more comfortable working in the video game industry than in the comic industry. Maybe you have worked more in the video games industry, or that's just an impression we have.
No, it's true. It's true. I love comic books. I think if I were going to do it again, um, there would be no not working directly with the artist. We'd bring a dude on site and we'd work with him more sort of video game style where we're sort of back and forthing, and because we want to change this, want to fix that, I want to do this, I'll change what I do, blah blah blah, and I think what I would want to do as well is I would want to write a comic book with as much space as it needs. Right. So the limitation of the 16 pages or 21 pages or 4 issues. I'd rather say, okay, look, it actually needs 8 issues of 32 pages each, and just take the space I need.
Okay. Before we are done, anything you would like to add or say to our listeners, or to us, or to anyone, really?
Well, I do want to say thank you because, first of all, I get that what you guys do is something that stems from passion, right?
Pretty much, yes.
Yeah, and I find that wonderful, and the fact that it's when somebody creates something, we sort of put it out in the world. Of course, we want everybody to love it, but at the same time, it's like you want honest feedback because really the desire is to ultimately get better, and the fact that you guys were harsh or not willing to look at it and then talk to me and I think that's great. It's one of the wonders of our current age.
Anyway, we have been almost 3 years doing the podcast now,
Yeah.
and I think that we always have found that even the comic book industry superstars have troubles with the first issues.
Yeah.
First issues are especially tricky. We have always found that there are bits of information or character development, or it's the rhythm or the narrative or something is always off in first issues. It's very difficult to make a good first issue, and I think that sometimes when you have read the whole arc, the 4 numbers in your case, you found that it's easier readable and that you understand, and that maybe the problem was that artificial, I don't know, separation was the problem and not the story itself.
Yeah, as a whole, it might flow better, which is certainly what I hope. When it's all sort of publicly available, I would love it if you guys would read it, and harsh harsh criticism or not, I'd love to hear what you guys think.
Well, it's been a pleasure for us. I don't know if here my partner has anything else to say, because I've been half an hour blah 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 asking, and I don't know. No. Okay. Well, we're going to end the interview. That's all, John McLean-Foreman. It's been a pleasure, and thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you guys. I really appreciate it.